A vampire king installed cameras to watch his paralyzed triplets, fearing sabotage. Instead, he saw a young maid holding each baby, and their frozen limbs began to move under her touch. What he didn't know, every time she healed his children, she was slowly dying. And he was about to sacrifice eternity to save her. Draven Cole hadn't slept in 47 days. Not that vampires needed sleep, but they craved it. The darkness behind closed eyelids offered escape, a brief reprieve from the weight of immortality. But for the past 6 weeks, every time he tried to rest, he heard them. The mechanical wheeze of respirators, the steady beep of heart monitors, and beneath it all, the terrible silence of 3 infants who should have been crying. His children. His heirs. 3 perfect babies born with lungs that worked and hearts that beat, but bodies that wouldn't move. The doctors called it congenital myasthenic syndrome with an unknown genetic component. Draven called it a curse. Someone had done this. Someone had poisoned his bloodline, and when he found them, death would be a mercy they'd never receive. He stood now in his private office on the eastern wing of the Cole estate, watching installation crews drill holes into mahogany walls that had stood for 200 years. The estate sprawled across 300 acres of Colorado wilderness, far from prying human eyes. Old money, the humans called it. They had no idea how old. "Sir, we're finishing the nursery cameras now," said Marcus, his head of security. The man was human, former Marine, loyal to a fault, and smart enough not to ask too many questions. 16 angles, night vision, audio sensitive enough to pick up a whisper. Good. Draven's voice was cold, controlled. Inside, rage coiled like a snake. "I want every second recorded. Triple redundancy on the servers. If someone is sabotaging my children, I'll have proof." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "The nurses are saying it's just bad luck, sir. Sometimes these things happen." "Bad luck doesn't strike all 3 children identically." Draven turned from the window, and Marcus took an involuntary step back. Even after 5 years of employment, the man still flinched at direct eye contact. "Good." Fear meant respect. "My children were healthy at birth. Perfect APGAR scores. Then, within 72 hours, complete paralysis. That's not nature, Marcus. That's design." "Yes, sir." "Leave me." Marcus practically fled. Draven returned to the window, watching storm clouds gather over Pikes Peak. The spring evening was cool, pleasant by vampire standards. He should have been celebrating. After 3 centuries of existence, he'd finally found someone worth creating a family with. Sarah. His wife's name still hurt to think. She died in childbirth, not from the delivery itself, but from something the doctors couldn't explain. Organ failure, they'd said. Complete system shut down within minutes of the triplets' birth. He'd held her as she bled out, helpless for the first time in 300 years. Now his children were dying too. Slowly, incrementally, their bodies giving up piece by piece. The best pediatric specialists in the country had examined them. All said the same thing. The paralysis was permanent, progressive, and eventually fatal. The babies would suffocate when their respiratory muscles stopped working. 6 months, maybe a year. Unacceptable. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Cameras live. Access code sent to your secure email." Draven moved to his desk, an antique from Vienna that he'd won in a card game in 1842. His laptop looked absurd on its ornate surface, ancient and modern, like himself. He logged into the security system, and his screen divided into 16 panels, all showing the same room. The nursery was white and sterile as a hospital. 3 medical cribs formed a triangle in the center, each surrounded by monitoring equipment. Tubes, wires, machines keeping 3 tiny bodies alive. Nurses moved between them with practiced efficiency. The night shift, Karen Morrison, late 50s, 30 years in neonatal care. David Huang, younger, former NICU specialist from Denver General. Both thoroughly vetted, both expensive, both useless. Draven watched them work, checked vitals, adjusted IVs, made notes on tablets. Professional. Compassionate, even. But the babies remained still as dolls. He fast-forwarded through the footage. Days blurred past. Different nurses, same routines. Nothing suspicious. Nothing helpful. Then, at 2:37 a.m. on Thursday morning, something changed. Draven sat up straighter, his hand freezing on the mouse. A young woman had entered the nursery, not through the main door the nurses used, but through the service entrance that led to the kitchen. She wore a simple gray dress, standard uniform for the estate's housekeeping staff. Dark hair pulled back in a bun. Small, maybe 5'3", slender build. He zoomed in on her face, but she kept her head down. The angle was wrong. She wasn't supposed to be there. Housekeeping had strict orders. No one entered the nursery except medical staff.
No exceptions.
The woman approached the first crib, Ethan, his oldest by 3 minutes. She looked over her shoulder, checking if anyone watched, then reached through the crib bars with trembling hands. She touched Ethan's tiny arm, her fingers gentle, hesitant. Then she closed her eyes. Draven leaned closer to the screen, his ancient heart beating faster. What was she doing? Praying? Some kind of ritual. Ethan's fingers moved. It was subtle, just a twitch, barely visible even on the high-definition feed. But Draven had watched these children for 47 sleepless days, memorizing every inch of their motionless bodies. That finger had moved. He was certain. The woman jerked her hand back, gasping. Even without audio, he cursed himself for not demanding it sooner. He could see her shock. She staggered back from the crib, gripping the edge of a counter for support. Her whole body shook. She stood there for 3 minutes, breathing hard. Then, impossibly, she moved to the second crib. Olivia, his daughter, his only girl. The woman repeated the process. Gentle touch, closed eyes, stillness. Olivia's foot twitched. The woman nearly fell. She caught herself on a supply cart, knocked over a container of cotton swabs. Her face finally turned toward the camera, and Draven got his first clear look. She couldn't be more than 25. Pale skin, dark circles under her eyes. Pretty, in an exhausted, fragile way. But it was her expression that struck him, not guilt or malice, but pure, overwhelming pain. She was crying. Before he could process this, she moved to the third crib. Mason, his youngest, his smallest, the one the doctors said would die first. The woman's hands shook so badly she could barely grip the crib bars. But she did. She touched Mason's chest, right over his heart, and closed her eyes again. Mason's entire arm moved, a spastic jerk that would have meant nothing to anyone else. To Draven, it was a miracle. The woman collapsed. She went down hard, cracking her head against the tile floor. She lay there, convulsing, while Draven watched helplessly through a camera installed just hours ago. He was already moving, already out of his office, but it was a 30-second run to the nursery and he knew he wouldn't make it in time. Karen rushed in. She must have heard the crash. She found the woman on the floor, checked her pulse, called for help. By the time Draven arrived, David was there too, both nurses hovering over the mysterious woman who'd broken every security protocol. Sir, Karen stood quickly. I don't know how she got in, Who is she? Draven interrupted, his voice deadly calm. That's Sarah Davenport, sir. She works in housekeeping. Started about 3 weeks ago. I don't know what she was doing here. She's not authorized. Get her to the medical wing.
Now.
Sir, shouldn't we call the police? She was.
Now.
They obeyed. David scooped up the unconscious woman while Karen called for a gurney. Draven watched them go, then turned to the cribs. All 3 babies were asleep. Peaceful. More relaxed than he'd seen them in weeks. And Ethan's hand was curled into a tiny fist, something he hadn't been able to do since he was 3 days old. Draven stood in the silent nursery, the hum of machines his only company, and smiled for the first time in 47 days. He'd found her, the one hurting his children. Or saving them. He needed to know which. Draven didn't visit the medical wing. Not immediately. Instead, he returned to his office and watched the footage again. And again. 12 times in total, analyzing every frame, every microsecond of movement. The pattern was unmistakable. Saris touched his children. They moved, and she collapsed. Cause and effect. But what mechanism? Magic didn't exist. He'd spent 3 centuries confirming that fact. Vampirism was biology, not mysticism. A virus that rewrote DNA, granted immortality, demanded blood. Science, however, strange. So what was this? He pulled up Saris Davenport's employment file. 24 years old. Born in a small town called Ashford, Montana. Population 800, now abandoned according to Google. No living relatives listed. Previous employment. None documented. References. A single priest from Billings who'd vouched for her character. Social security number checked out. Background screening came back clean. Too clean. Nobody had a history this blank unless they were running from something. Draven picked up his phone, then set it down. Marcus would ask questions. Better to handle this himself. He waited until sunset. Old habits died hard, then made his way to the medical wing. It occupied the mansion's original servants' quarters, converted 15 years ago when he'd realized immortality didn't prevent accidents. The staff thought it was for them. Really, it was for covering up the occasional vampire injury that would raise questions at human hospitals. Dr. Patricia Chun met him at the entrance. Human, 63, discreet, and expensive. She'd patched up knife wounds, gunshots, and things that shouldn't exist without ever filing a police report. She's stable, Patricia said without preamble. Severe dehydration, malnutrition, signs of chronic fatigue.
Her blood work is
unusual. Unusual how? High cortisol levels, elevated white blood cell count, markers consistent with autoimmune disorder. But inconsistent patterns. It's like her body is fighting itself and something else simultaneously, Patricia frowned. Mr. Cole, this girl is very sick. She needs specialists, not. She stays here. No outside doctors. Patricia's jaw tightened, but she nodded. She'd learned not to argue. Room 7. She woke up an hour ago, refused pain medication, and hasn't said a word. Draven found room 7 at the hallway's end. He dismissed the nurse stationed outside, young Tyler something, too curious for his own good, and entered alone. Saris sat upright in bed, still wearing the gray housekeeping dress, now stained with blood from her head wound. Her dark hair fell loose around her shoulders. Up close, she looked even younger. Fragile, but her eyes were old. They tracked him with the wariness of prey watching a predator. Smart girl. You're not supposed to be in the nursery, Draven said, closing the door behind him. She said nothing. Security footage shows you there at 2:37 a.m. You touched my children. He moved closer, and she pressed back against the headboard. Their bodies responded. First time in 6 weeks. Still nothing. But her fingers gripped the bedsheet, knuckles white. I could have you arrested for trespassing. Endangering minors. He sat in the chair beside her bed, deliberately casual. Or I could have you fired, blacklisted, ensure you never work in Colorado again. Her voice, when it finally came, was hoarse. Then do it. Tell me what you did first. I didn't hurt them. I know. Draven leaned forward. They moved, Saris. After you touched them, they moved.
How?
She looked away, her jaw set. A tear slid down her cheek, but she wiped it away angrily. You wouldn't understand. Try me. I'm 347 years old. I've seen things that would shatter your sanity. Her eyes snapped back to his, wide with shock. Then slowly understanding dawned.
You're.
Oh God. That's why the staff whispers. Why nobody quits even though you're, she swallowed hard. A vampire. Now that we've established, I'm not easily surprised, explain. Saris was quiet for a long moment. Her fingers kept trembling, that constant shake he'd noticed on the footage. I can take pain, she finally whispered. Transfer it. From them to me. That's impossible. So are vampires. Apparently her laugh was bitter. It's a curse.
From my family line.
Started generations back in Ashford. When someone hurts, I can absorb it. Make them better by making myself worse. Draven studied her face, searching for lies. Found only exhaustion and resignation. Prove it. What? He pulled a pocket knife from his jacket, flicked it open, and drew the blade across his palm. Blood welled up, black in the dim light. Take my pain, if you're telling the truth. I can't. Not from vampires. Only humans, only. Then prove it another way. Sarah stared at him for a long moment, then held out her hand. Give me the knife. He handed it over, and she pressed the blade against her own palm, slicing deep. She didn't flinch, didn't gasp. Just watched the blood flow with dead eyes. Then she closed those eyes and breathed out slowly. The cut sealed. Not instantly. It took maybe 30 seconds, but it closed, skin knitting together until only a thin white scar remained. The pain doesn't disappear, she said softly. It just moves. To somewhere deeper. Somewhere it can't escape. She opened her eyes, and they were bloodshot, exhausted. Your children are paralyzed because their bodies are in constant pain. Nerve pain, muscle pain, pain that won't stop. I take it into myself. For a few hours, they feel relief. They can move. And then it comes back. And I have to do it again. Her hands shook harder now, spasming. It's killing me, Mr. Cole. Every time I take their pain, I keep some. It builds up. But I can't stop. They're just babies. They don't deserve this. Draven sat back, processing. How long? What? How long do you have? Before it kills you? Sarah smiled, sad and small. Does it matter? Someone has to help them.
Why?
The question came out sharper than intended. Why risk your life for children you don't know? Because nobody helped us, her voice cracked. In Ashford. When the pain came, when the sickness spread, we had this gift and we used it. Saved each other. Until there was nobody left to save. 37 people died in 2 years. All from transferring pain they couldn't release. She looked at him with those ancient eyes in that young face. I'm the last one. The last person who can do this. If I don't help your children, nobody will. Draven stood, moved to the window. Dawn approached, pink light creeping over the mountains. He should sleep. Should think clearly. But clarity seemed impossible now. You'll stay here, he said finally. In the mansion. I'm assigning you to the nursery officially. Full-time position, triple your current salary. I don't want money. I don't care what you want, he turned back to her. You'll help my children. Under my supervision. And I'll find a way to keep you alive while you do it. There is no way. The curse doesn't. There's always a way. His voice was steel now, the voice that had commanded armies, that had built an empire across centuries. I didn't survive 300 years by accepting impossible. You'll save my children, Sarah Davenport. And I'll save you. She looked at him like he was insane. Maybe he was. But his children had moved, and he'd finally found hope. He wasn't letting either go. Dr. Raymond Foster arrived at the Cole estate with an entourage of 6 specialists for assistance and enough medical equipment to stock a small hospital. He was Denver's premier pediatric neurologist, a man whose waiting list stretched 18 months and whose fees could buy a luxury car. Draven had paid triple to get him there within 24 hours. Mr. Cole, Foster extended his hand, all professional courtesy and expensive cologne. I've reviewed the files you sent. Quite an unusual case. I'm eager to examine the children. Of course, Draven shook his hand, matching the man's crushing grip with effortless pressure. My staff will show you to the nursery. He'd spent the morning preparing for this, coaching the nurses, adjusting schedules, and most importantly, keeping Sarah locked in her room. She'd protested weakly, said the babies would suffer without her. He'd ignored her. This charade required careful timing. Foster's examination took 3 hours. Draven watched on the security feeds, studying every test, every measurement, every frown of concentration. The doctor was thorough, methodical, and increasingly puzzled. His team ran blood work, did ultrasounds, checked nerve conductivity. Finally, Foster emerged, his team trailing behind with tablets and charts.
Well,
Draven kept his voice neutral, bored even. A concerned father, but not desperate. Never desperate. Mr. Cole, I'll be direct. Your children's condition is permanent. Foster pulled up X-rays on his tablet. The myelin sheaths on their nerve fibers are degraded. Without those protective coverings, electrical signals from the brain can't reach the muscles properly. It's like trying to send electricity through damaged wires. Can it be repaired? Not with current medical technology. Gene therapy is experimental at best, and even then, Foster shook his head.
I'm sorry.
These children will never walk, likely never move beyond reflexive actions. Their life expectancy is severely limited. Draven let silence stretch between them. Let Foster squirm slightly. I see. There are quality-of-life measures we can implement. Better equipment, therapy protocols that might prevent further deterioration. And if someone told you they'd seen improvement? Movement where there shouldn't be. Foster's expression shifted to practice sympathy. Mr. Cole, I understand how difficult this is. Parents often see what they wish to see. A muscle spasm can look like intentional movement. It's natural to hope. I didn't say I saw it. I asked a hypothetical.
Right.
Well, hypothetically, Foster glanced at his team, who all wore matching expressions of professional pity. It would be impossible. The damage is structural, permanent. No intervention, medical, surgical, or otherwise, could restore function. And certainly no human being could influence it through simple touch or proximity. No human being, Draven repeated softly.
Exactly.
This isn't a condition that responds to alternative treatments. I've seen desperate parents try everything. Acupuncture, crystals, faith healers. Foster's tone was gently condescending. Nothing works because nothing can work. The biology simply doesn't allow it. Draven nodded slowly, thanked him with appropriate gravity, and wrote a check that would fund Foster's research for a year. The doctor and his entourage left with promises to send detailed reports and recommendations. The moment their cars disappeared down the mountain road, Draven went to Saris's room. She was pacing, her trembling hands pressed against her stomach. How long has it been? 6 hours? They're hurting. I can feel it. Even from here, they're...
Get dressed.
Proper clothes. Not that uniform. He tossed a shopping bag onto her bed. Items Marcus had purchased that morning under the guise of buying gifts for his niece. You're moving to the East Wing. Suite next to the nursery.
What?
No, I can't. You're now their official caretaker. 24-hour access. Do whatever you need to do. He watched her fumble with the bag, her shaking fingers struggling with the zipper. But carefully. Measured doses. I want you alive at the end of this. Saris pulled out a simple blue dress, jeans, soft sweaters. Normal clothes. Her eyes welled up. Why are you doing this? Because Foster and his team of experts just spent 3 hours confirming what I already knew. Medical science can't help my children. Draven moved to the window, watching clouds roll over the peaks. You can. That makes you the most valuable person in this house. I'm not valuable. I'm cursed. Semantics, he turned back to her. The doctors say no human could influence my children's condition through touch. They're right. But you're not just doing what humans do, are you? She was quiet, clutching the clothes against her chest. I need to understand how this works, Draven continued. The mechanism. The limitations. How much pain you can transfer before it kills you. Because right now you're operating on instinct and guilt, and that's inefficient. This isn't a business transaction. Everything is a transaction. His voice was cold now, the warmth stripped away. You give my children relief. I give you protection and resources. You survive longer, they suffer less. Both sides benefit. And when I die anyway? Saris's voice cracked. When the curse finally wins. What then? Draven crossed the room in 3 steps, moving with inhuman speed. He gripped her shoulders, forced her to look up at him. Her pulse hammered against her throat, fear and defiance mixed in equal measure. "You won't die," he said, each word deliberate. "Because I'm going to find a way to stop this curse. I have resources those doctors can't imagine. Access to information that predates their entire civilization. If there's an answer, I'll find it. There is no answer. My whole town looked for 300 years. Your whole town was human," he released her, stepped back. "I'm not." Sarah stared at him, searching his face for something, truth, maybe, or false hope. "You really think you can fix this?" "I think failure is unacceptable." Draven moved to the door.
Get dressed.
"The babies need you." "And Saris?" He paused, glanced back. "Start keeping a journal. Times, duration, intensity of pain transferred. Symptoms afterward. Everything. If we're going to solve this, we need data." He left her there, stunned and trembling, clutching normal clothes like a lifeline. In the hallway, Marcus waited with his usual stoic expression. "The doctor's gone, sir?"
Yes. And Marcus?
"I need you to find someone. A researcher. Someone who specializes in genetic abnormalities, rare bloodline conditions, inherited curses." "Curses, sir?" "Use the word syndrome if it makes you feel better." Draven started walking, Marcus falling into step beside him. "Find me an expert in the impossible. Someone brilliant enough to think outside conventional medicine." "That's a very specific request." "I'm a very specific man," Draven smiled, cold and sharp. "And Marcus?" "They need to be someone who won't ask why a housekeeping girl is dying to save 3 children she barely knows." "Understood, sir." Draven returned to his office and pulled up the security feed. On screen, the babies lay still again, their brief window of relief closed. But now he knew it would open again.
Soon.
Saris would see to that. And while she bought them time, he'd buy them a cure. The doctors said it was impossible. Draven had built an empire on proving experts wrong. Draven waited 3 nights before summoning her to the throne room. He'd watched her on the cameras, memorizing her routine. Every 4 hours, Saris would enter the nursery, approach each crib in the same order, Ethan, Olivia, Mason, and place her trembling hands on their tiny bodies. The babies would twitch, stretch, sometimes even grasp at the air with fumbling fingers. And Saris would stagger away, paler each time, weaker each time. She never complained, never asked for breaks, just returned to her room, collapsed on the bed, and waited for the pain to subside enough to do it again. It was the most dedicated act of self-destruction he'd ever witnessed. And he'd witnessed many. On the 4th night, at precisely midnight, he sent Marcus to fetch her. Not a request, a command. The throne room was a relic from another era, back when he'd needed to remind people of his power. High ceilings, dark wood paneling, and at the far end, an ornate chair that had once belonged to a Bavarian duke. He rarely used this room anymore. Intimidation was easier with lawyers than medieval aesthetics. But tonight required atmosphere. He sat in the throne, fingers steepled, when Marcus escorted Saris inside. She looked even worse than on the cameras. Dark circles under her eyes, hollow cheeks, skin so pale it was almost translucent. She walked with the careful steps of someone fighting vertigo. "You can go, Marcus." The security chief hesitated. "Sir, are you sure?" "Go." Marcus left, closing the massive oak doors behind him. The sound echoed through the cavernous space. Saris stood in the center of the room, arms wrapped around herself. She didn't look at the throne.
Didn't look at him.
Just stared at the floor with the resignation of someone awaiting execution. "Do you know why you're here?" Draven asked, his voice carrying effortlessly across the distance. "To fire me, or kill me," her voice was barely a whisper. "Either way. Look at me." She did, slowly, and he saw something flicker in her eyes. Not fear. Something harder. Anger, maybe. Or just exhaustion so complete it mimicked courage. My children are improving, Draven said. Ethan held a finger to his mouth yesterday. Olivia turned her head toward a sound. Mason's breathing is stronger. All objective improvements. That's good.
No.
That's theft. He stood, began walking down the steps from the throne platform. Each footfall deliberate, predatory. You're stealing something from my children. Their pain you claim. But pain is just signals, electricity and nerves. You can't steal electricity with your hands. I don't know how it works. The words burst out of her, raw with frustration. I just know I can do it. I've always been able to do it. Always? He stopped 10 feet away. Close enough to see her pulse racing, far enough to seem patient. Tell me about Ashford. Her face went white. How do you? I'm 3 centuries old and obscenely wealthy. I know everything a lie, but a useful one. 37 dead in 2 years. All with the same family name as you. Davenport. Sarah swayed on her feet. For a moment, he thought she'd collapse right there. But she locked her knees, lifted her chin. They weren't all Davenports. Some married in. Some were cousins, distant relations.
But yes.
We all had the gift. The curse, she laughed hollow. Same thing, really. What happened? What always happens?
Someone got sick.
Cancer, in my great-grandmother's case. She had a sister who could transfer pain. So the sister took it. Took all of it. Sarah's hands shook violently now. The cancer went into remission. Miracle, everyone said. But the sister started getting sick. Different symptoms, but sick. And when she died, they found another transfer. Another family member. It became tradition. A tradition that killed 37 people. A tradition that saved 63 others. Her eyes blazed now, that anger finally surfacing. Children who would have died from leukemia. Adults who would have suffered for years. We gave them life. We gave them hope. And you gave yourselves death. Draven circled her slowly, studying. Why you? Why are you the last one? Because I ran, the admission came out broken. When my mother started taking pain from the Peterson twins, they had bone cancer, both of them. I watched her deteriorate. Watched her body break down over 6 months. And when she died, everyone looked at me. 24 years old, and the last transferer in Ashford. Tears streamed down her face now. They needed me. Begged me. But I ran. Left them all to suffer, because I was too scared to die. Smart. She looked at him, shocked. Smart? I abandoned my town. You survived. Survival is always smart. He stopped circling, stood directly in front of her. So, why come here? Why risk everything for children you don't know?
Guilt.
Maybe. She wiped her eyes angrily. Or maybe I'm tired of running. Tired of knowing I can help and choosing not to. Your children are suffering. I can stop that. So I am. Even though it's killing you. Yes. Why? Because someone has to. She was shouting now, her voice echoing off the walls. Because if people like me don't help, then what's the point? Why have this curse if not to use it? I'm going to die anyway, Mr. Cole.
We all die.
At least this way, I die for something. Draven stared at her, this fragile, furious girl who'd turned self-destruction into martyrdom. She was crying openly now, shaking so hard she could barely stand. But she didn't look away, didn't back down. Stupidly brave. Uselessly noble. Exactly what his children needed. I'm doubling your treatments, he said flatly. What? Every 2 hours instead of 4. More contact, more relief for them. If you're determined to die for my children, let's make it count. Horror washed over her face. That'll kill me in days, maybe a week. Then we don't have much time. He turned away, headed back toward the throne. You'll stay in the East Wing. No leaving the estate. I'm posting guards, for your protection, officially. Really, it's to make sure you don't run again. You can't keep me prisoner. I can do whatever I want. He sat, leaned back, every inch the vampire king his ancestors had been. You walked into my home, attached yourself to my children, and made yourself indispensable. That was your choice. Now deal with the consequences. This is insane. This is survival. His voice dropped to deadly calm. My children need you alive and functional. Running will ensure you die for nothing. Staying gives you purpose. I'm offering you protection, resources, and meaning for however long you have left. Most people would call that generous. Sarah stared at him, chest heaving, tears still streaming. You're a monster. Yes, he smiled, sharp and cold. But I'm a monster who's going to save your life while you save theirs. Now get out. You have a treatment in 90 minutes. She stood there for a long moment, trembling with rage and exhaustion and something that might have been relief. Then she turned and walked toward the doors, each step careful, measured. Saris. She stopped but didn't turn around. Thank you, he said quietly, for choosing my children. Whatever your reasons. Her shoulders hitched just once. Then she left, the doors closing behind her with a sound like a coffin lid. Draven sat alone in the throne room, in the dark, and allowed himself exactly 30 seconds of uncertainty, of wondering if he was saving his children or murdering this girl. Then the 30 seconds ended, and he pulled out his phone. A text to Marcus. Find me everything on historical bloodline curses. Start with Eastern European archives, move to Asia. Someone, somewhere survived this. Another text, this one to his private investigator. Town called Ashford, Montana. Abandoned 2 years ago. I want every death certificate, every medical record, every piece of paper that mentions the name Davenport. And finally, one to Dr. Chen. Monitor the girl constantly. For fluids, vitamins, anything to keep her functional. I don't care if she protests. Keep her alive. He sent the messages and leaned back, closing his eyes. Somewhere above him, 3 babies slept peacefully, their bodies free of pain for a few precious hours. And somewhere in the East Wing, a girl cried herself to sleep, knowing she'd just agreed to her own execution. Draven didn't sleep at all. He had work to do. The entrance to the vault lay beneath the wine cellar, hidden behind a rack of 1947 Chateau d'Yquem that Draven had won in a poker game with a French nobleman who'd later been guillotined. He moved the rack aside, 300 pounds of wood and glass, effortless, and pressed his palm against the stone wall. The biometric lock was modern. The vault beyond was ancient. Stone steps descended into darkness, carved by hands that had been dust for 6 centuries. Draven didn't need light, but he flicked the switch anyway, watched fluorescent bulbs illuminate a tunnel that predated electricity by half a millennium. The contradiction amused him. Always had. 50 steps down, the tunnel opened into a chamber the size of a small warehouse. Climate-controlled, dehumidified, protected by enough security to guard nuclear codes. Because in many ways, what lay here was more dangerous. Knowledge. The kind that could end the world or save it, depending on who wielded it. Draven had been building this collection for 200 years, ever since he'd realized immortality without understanding was just extended ignorance. The walls were lined with shelves holding books that museums would kill for, original manuscripts, forbidden texts, journals from alchemists and madmen and geniuses who'd all stumbled onto pieces of larger truths. But tonight, he bypassed the main collection and headed for the back corner, where the oldest volumes rested behind reinforced glass. The vampire section. His own history, chronicled by those who'd come before. He unlocked the case and pulled out a leather-bound journal, its pages brown with age. Chronicles of the First Families, written in Latin by someone named Cornelius in 1243. Draven had met Cornelius once, briefly, before the man had walked into sunlight and ended his own existence. He flipped through pages carefully, scanning entries about bloodline creation, the virus that made them, the rules that govern their existence. Nothing about paralysis. Nothing about curses that transferred pain. He set it aside and grabbed another. Then another. Hours passed in silence, marked only by turning pages and growing frustration. Nothing. Finally, he moved to a different section. Older books. Not vampire texts, but human ones, collected from cultures that had understood things modern science dismissed as superstition. A grimoire from Bavaria, dated 1687. A medical text from Persia, 11th century. A collection of folklore from the Carpathian Mountains, so old the language was barely recognizable. And there, in a slim volume bound in cracked leather, he found it. Sanguis mutatio. Blood change. The text was in medieval Latin, the handwriting cramped and frantic. Draven pulled out his phone, used the translation app. Even after 3 centuries, some dialects eluded him, and began piecing together the entry. The curse of sanguis mutatio appears in bloodlines touched by old magic before the church drove such practices underground. It manifests as the ability to transfer suffering, physical pain, disease, even death itself, from one body to another through direct contact and force of will. The bearer becomes a vessel, absorbing the affliction into their own flesh. The relief granted to the sufferer is temporary, lasting hours or days depending on the severity. But the bearer retains a portion of each transferred suffering, accumulated like poison in the blood. There is no cure. There is no reversal. The curse passes through family lines, skipping generations seemingly at random, appearing most often in daughters. Each bearer will die from the accumulated pain, their bodies unable to sustain the weight of suffering stolen from others. The only mercy, death comes faster than the original diseases would have taken their victims. A year of cancer becomes a month of transferred agony. A lifetime of nerve pain becomes weeks of deterioration. Those who carry this curse are both blessed and damned. They ease suffering but cannot end it. They save lives but only by sacrificing their own. Draven set down the phone, his hands steady, but his mind racing. Everything Saris had told him, confirmed by a text written 5 centuries ago. This wasn't supernatural mysticism. It was biological, hereditary, coded into DNA like his own vampirism. And just like his vampirism, it came with rules. He kept reading, searching for loopholes, exceptions, anything useful. Most of the text was observational, clinical descriptions of victims, never called bearers, always victims, who died in medieval villages. But near the end, one passage made him stop. I have observed 3 cases where sanguis mutatio bearers survived longer than expected. In each instance, the bearer had ceased taking new suffering and was sustained by another who had access to old remedies. One case involved a vampire's blood, given willingly, which slowed but did not stop the deterioration. The bearer lived an additional 6 months before succumbing. Note: the vampire involved was later executed by church hunters. His name is lost to history. Draven read the passage 3 times, his ancient heart beating faster. Vampire blood, given willingly. 6 additional months. It wasn't a cure, but it was time. He pulled out his phone, snapped photos of every page, then carefully returned the book to its shelf. His hands moved automatically, muscle memory from centuries of research, while his mind calculated possibilities. 6 months. Maybe more, if the text was conservative. Maybe less, if Saris was already too far gone. But enough time to find a real solution. Enough time to search every archive, consult every expert, chase down every lead. Enough time to save her while she saved his children. He was halfway back up the stairs when his phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Chen. Subject experiencing severe tremors. Recommending immediate 4 fluids and sedation. Another text seconds later from Marcus. The girl collapsed in the nursery. Babies are crying. Should I call emergency services? Draven took the stairs 3 at a time, moving with inhuman speed. He burst through the wine cellar, past startled kitchen staff, and reached the nursery in under a minute. Saris lay on the floor between the cribs, convulsing. Her eyes rolled back, foam flecked her lips, and her body jerked with spasms that looked like seizures. Dr. Chen knelt beside her, checking vitals, while Marcus hovered nearby looking helpless. Above them, the babies screamed. Actually screamed, their voices raw and terrified, their bodies thrashing in the cribs with more movement than they'd shown since birth. "Sir, I need to call," Dr. Chin began. "No," Draven knelt beside Saris, pushed the doctor aside. "How much pain did you take this time?" he demanded, even though she clearly couldn't answer. Her eyes focused briefly, found his face. Her lips moved, forming words without sound. All of it. They were hurting so much. Then she was gone again, lost to the seizures. Draven looked up at his children, thrashing and screaming, finally moving like normal babies. Full range of motion, strong lungs, healthy reflexes. Everything he'd wanted. Bought with this girl's life. "Get her to the medical wing," he ordered. "For fluids, oxygen, whatever she needs. And prep my office. I need equipment brought up from the vault." "Sir, what equipment?" "Medical kit. Needles, tubes, storage bags." He stood, his decision already made. "And someone call the baby's night nurse. They're going to need feeding." Because they could cry now, could move, could show hunger instead of lying still as dolls. Saris had done that. Had taken every ounce of pain from all three babies simultaneously, absorbed enough suffering to break her body. And Draven was going to save her for it, even if it meant bleeding himself dry. Marcus and Dr. Chin carried Saris away while nurses rushed in to calm the babies. Draven stayed long enough to watch Ethan grab a nurse's finger, grip it with surprising strength. Olivia turned her head toward a voice. Mason kicked his legs, crying lustily.
"Perfect.
Beautiful.
Alive."
He left the nursery and headed for his office, pulling out his phone. One text, to himself a reminder. Sanguis mutatio, vampire blood buys time. Start treatments tonight. He'd spent 3 centuries avoiding human attachments, knowing they'd die while he continued. Apparently, he'd never learned the lesson. But if saving one human girl meant saving 3 vampire children, then the math was simple. He just hoped Saris would forgive him for what came next. They arrived at dawn, 3 black SUVs rolling up the mountain road like a funeral procession. Draven watched from his office window, coffee in hand, a human affectation he'd never quite abandoned, and allowed himself a moment of profound irritation. He'd known this was coming. The moment he'd tripled blood shipments to the estate, someone in the supply chain would notice.
Someone would talk.
And the High Council would come asking questions. Lord Kale emerged from the lead vehicle, tall and severe in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. Behind him came Elena Vasquez and Thomas Brennan, the other 2 council members who govern vampire affairs in the Western Territories. All old, all powerful, all extremely inconvenient. Marcus met them at the entrance. Through the security feed, Draven watched his security chief maintain professional composure while 3 apex predators invaded his employer's home. "They're demanding to see you, sir," Marcus said through the phone. "I tried to schedule something, but let them in. Conference room. I'll be down in 5 minutes." "Sir, should I?" "Just them, Marcus. No staff present." He finished his coffee slowly, deliberately. Let them wait. Power was as much about patience as force. When he entered the conference room, all 3 council members stood. Not out of respect. Vampires didn't do respect, but because standing gave tactical advantage. Ready to fight or flee. Always prepared. Draven, Kale's voice was smooth, cultured, with the faint accent of someone who'd learned English in the 1800s. "Lovely to see you. Though I wish it were under better circumstances."
Kale. Helena.
Thomas. Draven took his seat at the head of the table, forced them to sit or remain standing awkwardly. They sat. "What brings the council to Colorado?" Concern. Elena leaned forward, her dark eyes sharp. She'd been turned during the Spanish Inquisition, had survived by being smarter and more ruthless than her hunters. "Your blood shipments have tripled in 6 weeks. That's not normal consumption for a single vampire and his household staff. I'm aware of my own purchasing habits." "Then you're aware," Thomas cut in, his southern drawl deceptively lazy, that such dramatic increases trigger automatic audits. We need to ensure the blood supply isn't being wasted or diverted to unauthorized purposes. Draven smiled, cold and sharp. Unauthorized purposes, such as creating new vampires without council approval. Kale's voice was steel now. Housing unauthorized vampires. Running experiments. The council takes these matters seriously, Draven. You know this. I'm not creating anyone. The blood is for medical purposes. Your children, Elena's expression softened slightly. Motherhood, even vicarious, still touched something in her. We heard about their condition. I'm sorry. Don't be. They're improving. All 3 council members went still. That predator stillness that meant danger. Improving, Kale repeated slowly. Dr. Foster's report said their condition was permanent. Irreversible. Dr. Foster was wrong. Medical science doesn't make those kinds of errors. Draven Thomas leaned back, studying him. Not with conditions this severe. So, either you're lying, or something else is happening here. Draven met his gaze evenly. My children are recovering. That's all you need to know. Actually, Kale said softly, we need to know considerably more. The council has authority to investigate any unusual vampire activity. This qualifies. My children aren't vampires yet. They're human infants, born to a vampire father. That makes them council business. Kale pulled out a tablet, slid it across the table. Blood shipment records for the past month. You've taken delivery of 60 units. That's enough to sustain 6 adult vampires comfortably. You're 1 vampire, Draven. Where's the blood going? Draven glanced at the records, pushed the tablet back. Medical treatments. The children require specialized care. Human infants don't consume vampire blood. These ones do. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Elena's eyes flashed red, just for a second, before she controlled herself. Draven, you can't be serious. Giving vampire blood to human children is not against council law. I checked. He'd spent 3 nights reading the accords, every clause and subsection. There's no provision prohibiting vampire blood use in medical treatment of one's own human offspring, because no one's ever been insane enough to try it. Thomas was on his feet now. You don't know what that blood will do to them. They could turn early, or worse. Or they could live, which they wouldn't otherwise. Draven stood slowly, let his full presence fill the room. 3 centuries of power, condensed into human form. My children were dying. I found a treatment. End of discussion. Not even close to the end. Kale stood as well, matching him. The council requires full disclosure. Medical records, treatment protocols, and access to examine the children ourselves.
No.
That's not a request. Neither is my refusal. Draven moved toward the door. The children are under my protection. They're improving daily. The blood is being used responsibly and legally. The council has no grounds for further investigation. We have every ground. Elena's voice was quiet but carried weight. Draven, please. We're not trying to hurt your family. But vampire blood affects humans in unpredictable ways. We need to ensure those children aren't being harmed by whatever treatment you're using. They're not. Then prove it. Let us see them. For a moment, Draven considered it. The babies were strong now, healthy, moving normally. They'd pass any inspection. But letting the council into his home, into his children's lives, meant opening doors he couldn't close. Meant scrutiny he couldn't afford. Not with Saris upstairs, dying by inches to maintain the illusion of recovery. The answer is no, he said finally. My children, my business. Your children, council jurisdiction. Kale's expression hardened. You're making this difficult. I'm making this private. There's a difference. Not anymore. Kale tapped his tablet, pulled up another document. As of this morning, the council has authorized surveillance of the Cole estate. For your protection, and theirs. We'll be monitoring all activities, all shipments, all. Get out. The words came out as a growl, his control slipping. The conference room windows rattled. Lights flickered. Elena stood quickly, hands raised. Draven, calm down.
Get
Out, his eyes blazed red now, fangs extending. My home. My children. My rules. The council has no authority here. Actually, a new voice said from the doorway, they do.
Draven Spoon.
Lord Kale's assistant, a weasel named Peter something, stood there with a tablet and a smug expression. Section 47 of the Vampire Accords, Peter continued, reading from a screen. When a vampire's actions pose potential risk to human-vampire relations or the secrecy of vampire existence, the Council may authorize monitoring for public safety. The surveillance order was filed this morning. Legally binding. Draven looked at Kale, who had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. It's not personal, Kale said. But your behavior has been erratic. Massive blood purchases, isolation, now claims of miraculous recovery. We need to know what's happening. For the good of all vampires, Elena added softly. You understand. Thomas just watched, his expression unreadable. Draven understood perfectly. The council was scared. Scared of what he might be doing, what he might be discovering, what he might be becoming. Power consolidated was power that threatened the balance. Fine, he said, forcing calm he didn't feel. Monitor the estate. You'll find nothing illegal. We'll determine that. Kale moved toward the door, Elena and Thomas following. Oh, and Draven? Whatever you're doing with the blood, it stops until we complete our investigation. That would kill my children. Then you'd better be very cooperative. Kale smiled, cold as winter. Good day. They left. Peter scurried after them. Draven stood alone in the conference room, hands clenched into fists, fighting the urge to tear something apart. Marcus appeared in the doorway. Sir? They're going to be watching everything. Draven's voice was barely controlled. Every treatment, every moment. They'll see Ceres. They'll figure out what she's doing. Is that illegal?
Worse.
It's exploitable. He turned to Marcus. Double the security on the nursery. No one gets in without my explicit approval. And tell Dr. Chun to move Ceres to the underground medical suite. The one you use when?
Yes. That one.
Where there are no windows and the walls are reinforced. Draven headed for the door. If the council wants to watch, let them watch the nursery. They won't see what's actually keeping my children alive. And what about the blood shipments? Draven smiled, sharp and dangerous. Let them stop the shipments. I have enough stored to last months. By the time they realize we're not using it on the babies. He left the sentence unfinished. Let Marcus draw his own conclusions. Because the truth was simpler and more dangerous than the council imagined. The blood wasn't for the babies. It was for keeping Ceres alive while she saved them. And Draven would burn the council to ash before he let them interfere. The scream came at 3:47 a.m. Draven was in the library, researching Scandinavian folklore about pain transfers, a lead that had gone nowhere, when he heard it through the security feed. A nurse. Young, relatively new, someone named Ashley or Amber. She was screaming for help. He moved without thought, without calculation. Just speed. Down 2 hallways, up 1 flight of stairs, through the nursery doors hard enough to crack the frame. The scene registered in pieces. 3 babies, awake and alert, stretching tiny limbs and cooing.
Perfect.
Healthy.
Alive.
And Ceres, collapsed on the floor between their cribs, convulsing violently. Blood poured from her nose, her ears. Her eyes had rolled back, showing only whites. The trembling that had plagued her for weeks had escalated into full-body seizures. I walked in and she was, the nurse, definitely Ashley, was backing toward the door, her face pale with horror. Should I call 911? No. Draven dropped to his knees beside Ceres, checking her pulse. Rapid, irregular, barely there. Get Dr. Chun.
Now.
Ashley ran. Draven carefully turned Ceres onto her side, basic first aid from a century of watching humans die. She was burning up, fever so high he could feel it radiating off her skin. More blood leaked from her nose, and when she coughed, dark clots spattered the pristine white floor. Ceres, he kept his voice low, calm, though his hands were anything but steady. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes found his face, focused briefly. Her lips moved. "Too much," she whispered.
Took.
"Too much.
Wanted them.
To be normal. Just for tonight." "You fool," the words came out harsher than intended. "I told you to be careful. To measure."
There.
"Babies," she smiled, blood on her teeth. "They don't understand careful." Above them, Ethan giggled. Actually giggled, the sound pure and joyful. Olivia was grasping her toes, pulling them toward her mouth with the uncoordinated enthusiasm of a healthy 6-week-old. Mason was kicking his legs, watching the mobile above his crib with wide, alert eyes. All three, moving like they'd never been paralyzed at all. And Saris was dying for it. Dr. Chen rushed in, medical bag in hand, Tyler close behind with equipment.
Jesus Christ, Shembriated, Knieling Bezide Seris.
Her temperature's at least 106. She's going into toxic shock. "Fix it. Mr. Cole, I can't just." "Fix it." His voice cracked the windows, made the baby start crying.
He didn't care.
"Whatever it takes. Do it." Chun worked quickly, efficiently. For line in, fluids running. Oxygen mask. Medication to control the seizures. But Draven could see the truth in her expression. This wasn't something medicine could fix. "We need to move her," Chin said. "The underground suite. She needs intensive care, possibly life support." "Do it." Draven scooped Saris up himself, cradling her against his chest. She weighed nothing, all bone and fever and desperation. "Tyler, stay with the babies." "Sir, the council's monitors, they'll see." "I don't care." He was already moving, Chin scrambling to follow with the 4-bag. "Let them see." They took the service elevator, the one that descended to the estate's original foundation. Down here, the walls were stone, and the air smelled of earth.
No windows.
No natural light. Just secure rooms that existed on no blueprint in no public record. The medical suite was state-of-the-art, hidden in a medieval dungeon. Life support equipment next to walls that had witnessed centuries of secrets. Chun and Tyler got Saris onto the bed, hooked her up to monitors. The steady beat of her heart sounded too slow, too irregular. Her temperature kept climbing despite the ice packs they packed around her. "Talk to me," Draven demanded. "What's happening?" Her body's shutting down. Chen checked readouts, adjusted medications. "It's like her immune system is attacking itself. Every organ system is failing simultaneously." The curse, Draven paced, unable to stand still. "She's accumulated too much pain. It's destroying her from inside. That's not medically possible." "Neither are vampires." He stopped pacing, made a decision. "How much blood has she lost?" "Maybe 2 units. "Why?" Chen's eyes widened.
No.
"Mr. Cole, you can't be thinking. How much would she need to replace what she's lost?" "That's not the issue. Her body is failing, not just her blood supply. Giving her more blood won't." "Vampire blood." He met Chen's eyes. "You've seen what it does. Accelerated healing. Enhanced regeneration. If I give her my blood, you'll turn her into a vampire. Not with small amounts. The texts say." "The texts?" Chin looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "Sir, with all due respect, this girl is dying. Vampire blood might keep her alive, or it might accelerate her death. We don't know. There's no research, no clinical trials. Then we experiment." Draven pulled a scalpel from the equipment tray, sliced his palm open. Black blood welled up, the smell copper and strange. "Calculate the minimum dose. Give her enough to heal, but not enough to turn. I don't know what that amount is." "Then guess." He held his bleeding hand over a collection vial. "Because doing nothing means watching her die, and I'm not doing that." Chin stared at him for a long moment. Then she grabbed the vial, let his blood drip into it. 10 cc's, she said finally. "That's my guess. Enough for enhanced healing, probably not enough for transformation. Probably. Good enough." Draven watched her draw the blood, measure it precisely. "Do it." Chun prepared a syringe, tapped out air bubbles. "If this kills her." "It won't. You don't know that. I know doing nothing definitely kills her. He looked down at Saris, her face pale as death, blood still leaking from her nose. And I'm not losing anyone else I can save. Chen injected the blood into Saris's foreline. For a moment, nothing happened. Just the steady beep of monitors, the hiss of oxygen, the rattle of Saris's labored breathing. Then she convulsed. Not like before, this was different. Violent, yes, but purposeful somehow. Her back arched off the bed. Her hands clenched into fists. The monitors went crazy, alarms blaring. She's coding, Tyler shouted. No, Draven grabbed Saris's hand, felt her grip his fingers with sudden, impossible strength. She's fighting. And she was. He could see it in the set of her jaw, the determination in her unconscious face. The vampire blood was working through her system, accelerating everything, the healing and the damage both. It was a race. Recovery versus destruction. Minutes passed like hours. Chun and Tyler worked frantically, adjusting medications, monitoring vitals, doing everything medical science could offer. Draven just held Saris's hand and willed her to survive. Slowly, impossibly, her temperature began to drop. 106 to 105. 105 to 104. The seizures lessened. Her breathing steadied. The blood flow from her nose stopped. At 4:23 a.m., her eyes opened. They were still brown, still human. Not the red of a vampire. Not yet. Did it work? She whispered, her voice raw. The babies? Draven laughed, the sound half relief, half disbelief. Of course you're asking about them. Did it work?
Yes.
They're perfect. Moving normally. All 3-inch. She smiled, weak but genuine. Then she looked down at their joined hands, at his blood still on her lips from the 4. Understanding dawned slowly. You gave me vampire blood. Yes.
That's
dangerous. Yes. I could turn. The dose was controlled. Calculated, he squeezed her hand gently. You're still human, Saris. For now, she closed her eyes again, exhausted. How long? What? How long until I have to do it again? Transfer their pain? Draven looked at Dr. Chen, who checked her monitors and shook her head. You're not doing it again, Draven said firmly. You almost died. Another transfer will kill you. Then the babies will suffer. The babies will manage. No, Saris's eyes opened, fierce despite her weakness. I didn't survive this just to let them hurt. I'll do it again. Tomorrow, or whenever they need me. Saris. You can't stop me, she smiled, sad and knowing. Lock me up, I'll find a way. Fire me, I'll break in. This is what I do, Mr. Cole. This is who I am. Draven stared at this impossibly stubborn girl who'd just clawed her way back from death's door and was already planning her next sacrifice. You're insane, he said softly. Yes, she closed her eyes again. But so are you. We're a perfect match. She fell asleep, or unconscious. Hard to tell the difference. Chun adjusted her checked her vitals, and turned to Draven with an expression he couldn't read. She means it, the doctor said quietly. She'll kill herself saving your children. I know. Can you stop her? Draven looked at Saris's sleeping face, peaceful now despite everything. No, he admitted. But I can make sure she survives it. He just had to figure out how. Before the council noticed. Before the curse won. Before he lost everyone he'd tried to save. Draven left at midnight, telling no one but Marcus where he was going. Ashford, Montana, he said, tossing coordinates onto Marcus's desk. The girl's hometown. I need to see it. Marcus looked up from his security monitors, concern etched on his face. Sir, the council surveillance. Let them watch an empty estate. You're in charge until I return. Draven pulled on his coat, checked his phone. Dr. Chun has her instructions. Sarah stays sedated for at least 24 hours. The babies have enough residual relief to last. And if the council asks where you are, tell them I'm hunting. They'll believe that he headed for the door, then paused. Marcus? If anything happens to Saris or the children while I'm gone, I'm holding you personally responsible. Understood, sir. The drive took 9 hours, through mountain passes and high desert, past towns that existed more as memories than places. Draven drove a rental, anonymous, forgettable, and watched the sun rise over Wyoming with the same detachment he'd felt for 3 centuries of sunrises. But this one felt different.
Urgent, Somo.
He reached Ashford just after 2 p.m. The town wasn't on modern maps. GPS sent him to coordinates that showed nothing but grassland and the skeletal remains of buildings. He parked where a main street might have been and stepped out into silence, so complete it felt unnatural. The wind had scoured away most evidence of human habitation. Foundations remained, concrete slabs where houses had stood. A rusted water tower, collapsed on one side. The husk of a church, its steeple fallen through the roof. And everywhere, absolutely everywhere, the silence. Draven walked down what had been Main Street, his footsteps echoing off nothing. 37 deaths in 2 years, Saris had said. But the town looked like hundreds had lived here once. Where had everyone else gone? He found the first grave behind the church. It wasn't marked, not officially. Just a depression in the earth, roughly human-sized, with a wooden cross made from fence posts. No name.
No dates.
Nothing but a simple carving, a hand reaching toward another hand. The symbol of the pain transfers. Draven knelt, brushed away dirt and dead grass. More graves lay beyond this one, dozens of them, all marked with the same symbol. A mass burial site disguised as a forgotten cemetery. He pulled out his phone, started taking pictures. Documentation. Evidence. Proof that this curse was real, had existed for generations, had killed before, and would kill again. A voice behind him. You're on private property. Draven turned slowly. An old man stood 20 feet away, holding a shotgun with comfortable familiarity. 70-something, weathered face, eyes that had seen too much. He wore a sheriff's jacket, faded and patched. I didn't see any signs, Draven said calmly. Don't need signs when there's nothing left to protect. The man lowered the gun slightly, studying Draven with sharp attention. You're not from around here. And you're not a journalist. Had plenty of those 5 years back when the evacuation happened. So what are you? Someone looking for answers. About Ashford? The old man spat into the dirt. Ain't nothing here but ghosts and bad memories. I'm looking for information about the Davenport family. The gun came back up. Get out. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just want to understand. I said get out. The man's hands shook now, rage and grief mixing. You people already took everything. Took our town, took our families, took our goddamn souls. There's nothing left for you to study. Draven raised his hands, non-threatening. I know Saris Davenport. She's alive. She's helping my family. The gun wavered. Saris? The name came out broken. Little Saris survived. You knew her? Knew her? The man laughed bitterly.
I'm Sheriff James Davenport.
Her uncle. Or I was before she ran. He lowered the gun completely now, suddenly looking decades older. Before we all ran. What happened here? James stared at him for a long moment, weighing something. Then, he gestured with the gun. Come on. I'll show you. But touch anything, and I shoot you. Don't care who you are. They walked through the ruins, James moving with the certainty of someone who knew every stone and shadow. He led Draven to what had been a community center, its walls mostly intact, its windows empty holes. Inside, the walls were covered in photographs. Hundreds of them, pinned up with rusted tacks, protected from weather by the remaining roof. Faces stared out, families, children, old people. All smiling, all dead. The Davenport curse, James said quietly, started with Margaret Davenport in 1687. She could take pain from sick folk, make them well. Everyone thought it was a blessing. He pointed to an old daguerreotype, a stern woman in pioneer dress. Margaret lived to 43. Old age back then. Died peaceful in her sleep. But it didn't end with her.
No.
The gift passed down. Skipped some generations, hit others hard. By 1950, we had 6 transferers in town.
Thought we were blessed.
Special, James's voice turned bitter. Then people started getting sick. Cancer, mostly. Mining town, radon in the rocks. And we had people who could help. Who could take that cancer, transfer it, cure it. So they did. James moved to another wall, more recent photos. Color prints from the 2000s. My sister Margaret, named after the first one. She took cancer from 5 people. 5-inch, he touched a photo of a middle-aged woman, dark hair, Sarah's eyes. Took her 2 years to die. Slower than the cancer would have killed them, but more painful. Watched her waste away, screaming, while the 5 she saved lived normal lives. Draven felt something cold settle in his chest. And the town kept asking for help.
We didn't ask.
We demanded. James's hands clenched. It became expected. You got sick, you went to a transfer. They took your pain because that's what they did. That's what they were for, he laughed, harsh and broken. We used them up like resources. Like coal from the mines. 37 dead. 37 transfers, yes. But 73 people total. James gestured to the photos. Because when the transfers died, their families fell apart. Suicides.
Grief.
Some just gave up. And the people they'd saved? Most left town. Couldn't stand the guilt. Couldn't look at us anymore. What about the ones who stayed? James pulled down a photo, handed it to Draven. A group of people standing in front of the church, maybe 20 of them. Serious faces.
Determined.
The keepers, James said. Those of us who stayed to document what happened. Make sure nobody forgot the price that was paid. He pointed to himself in the photo. Younger, harder. We buried the dead. Marked the graves. Kept records. Where are those records? James walked to the back of the room, kicked aside debris, and revealed a trapdoor. He pulled it open, climbed down. Draven followed into a basement that smelled of mold and old paper. Metal filing cabinets lined the walls, dozens of them. James opened one, pulled out a folder labeled Davenport, Margaret, 2. Inside were medical records, death certificates, handwritten journals. Margaret's own words, documenting each pain transfer, each deterioration of her body. Draven read entries at random. Took John Peterson's bone cancer today. He cried with relief. I can feel it in my femur now, eating away. Maybe 3 months left. Sarah asked me to take her daughter's leukemia. Said I was her only hope. How could I refuse? The pain is indescribable. I don't want to die. But I can't stop helping. What kind of person would I be? Sarah's mother, Draven said quietly. Yeah, James pulled out another folder.
Sarah's watched her die.
Watched her waste away over 8 months, taking pain from half the town. And when Margaret finally passed, everyone looked at Sarah's. She was 24, strong, healthy, the last transferer in Ashford. So she ran. James slammed the cabinet shut. Can't say I blame her. We'd become parasites, feeding on our own. Someone had to survive to tell the truth. Draven photographed the journals, the records, everything he could. Evidence of a curse that killed systematically, predictably. A biological imperative encoded in DNA, demanding sacrifice. You said you know Sarah's, James said finally. That she's helping your family. Yes. She's transferring pain again, isn't she? Draven didn't answer.
Didn't need to.
James closed his eyes. God damn it. She's doing it again. After everything, after watching this place destroy itself, she still. He grabbed Draven's coat, sudden and fierce. You stop her. Whatever she's doing, you stop her. Don't let her become another photo on that wall. I'm trying. That's why I'm here. Then you're looking in the wrong place. James released him. Pulled out one final folder. You want to save her? You need this. Inside was a single page, yellowed with age, covered in cramped handwriting. Latin mixed with English, diagrams of human bodies with strange symbols. Margaret the First kept notes, James explained, about the curse, how it worked, how it passed down, and at the end he pointed to the bottom of the page. She wrote about the only person who ever survived it. Draven read the passage, his ancient heart beating faster. The curse cannot be broken, but it can be shared. Thomas Whitmore, vampire of the old bloodline, took half my burden into himself. We lived together for 6 years before he walked into sunrise. He said eternity wasn't worth watching everyone die. I think he was right. A vampire, Draven breathed.
Yeah.
Apparently, they can absorb the curse without dying from it. Or they die slower, at least. James looked at him strangely. Why do you care so much about Ceres? What is she to you? Draven met his eyes. She's saving my children. 3 infants who were dying. She's killing herself to keep them alive. Jesus Christ, James sat down heavily on a filing cabinet. She really is just like her mother. No, Draven carefully folded the page, pocketed it. She's going to survive. Because I'm going to do what Thomas Whitmore did. I'm going to share her burden. You're a vampire. Yes. James laughed, the sound half mad. Of course you are. Why the hell not? He stood, headed for the ladder.
Go.
Save her. And tell Ceres, he paused, voice cracking. Tell her I'm sorry we failed her. Tell her Uncle James is sorry. Draven climbed out of the basement, out of the building, back into the dying light of late afternoon. He had what he needed. Proof the curse could be shared. Evidence that vampires could survive what humans couldn't. And a name, Thomas Whitmore. He had research to do. And a girl to save. Draven returned to find his estate in chaos. 3 council security vehicles blocked the main entrance. Armed guards, human mercenaries who asked no questions, patrolled the grounds. And standing on his front steps, Lord Kale wore the expression of someone who just won a game Draven hadn't known they were playing. Marcus met him at the gate, his face pale. Sir, I tried to stop them. They had warrants, council authorization. Where are my children? Nursery. Under guard. They're fine, but… Ceres? Marcus's expression darkened. They took her. Everything stopped.
The world narrowed to those 3 words.
Explain. Lord Kale arrived 6 hours ago with an emergency council order. Said there was evidence of illegal blood magic on the premises. They searched everything, found Ceres in the underground medical suite. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. They're calling it blood theft, sir. Claiming she's been stealing life force from the children. Draven's vision went red. Where is she now? East Wing, 3rd floor. They've converted one of the guest rooms into a holding cell. Dr. Chin tried to intervene, said Ceres was a patient under medical care, but Kale overruled her. Marcus stepped closer, lowered his voice. Sir, there's more. They've scheduled an execution. Tomorrow at dawn. Council law for blood theft. Death by sunlight. For a moment, Draven couldn't breathe.
Couldn't think.
Just saw Ceres burning, screaming, dying for the crime of saving his children. Get Dr. Chen. Tell her to check on the babies. Make sure they haven't been harmed. His voice was deadly calm, the quiet before a storm. Then clear all non-essential staff from the building. What happens next, they don't need to see. Sir, what are you? Just do it. Draven walked into his own home, like a stranger entering enemy territory. Council guards watched him pass, hands on weapons. He ignored them, climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. Found Kale standing outside what had been the Azure guest suite, now reinforced with steel bars on the door. Draven, Kale smiled, cold and satisfied. Good timing. I was about to call you. Where is she? The blood thief? Inside. Under guard until her execution, Kale gestured to the door. You're welcome to see her if you'd like. Say goodbye. Draven moved so fast Kale barely had time to flinch. One moment they were talking, the next Draven had him pinned against the wall, hand around his throat, lifting him off the ground. You had no right, Draven snarled, fangs fully extended. This is my house. My family. You had no right. Council. Authority, Kale choked out. Section 47-inch. Section 47 allows monitoring, not arrests. Not executions, he squeezed harder. Watched Kale's face turn purple. You overstepped. Guards rushed forward, weapons raised. Draven didn't care. Let them shoot. Let them try. Sir. Dr. Chen's voice cut through the rage. She stood at the end of the hallway, Tyler behind her. The babies are crying. All three. They're in pain again. Draven released Kale, who collapsed gasping. How long? Since they took Saris. 6 hours now. Their vitals are deteriorating. Chen's expression was grim. Without her treatments, they're regressing.
Fast.
You see? Kale wheezed, rubbing his throat. She's been stealing their life force, making them dependent on her. Classic blood magic manipulation. She's been healing them, you fool, Draven turned on him. They were paralyzed.
Dying.
She found a way to give them relief. By draining herself? That's not healing. That's parasitic transference. Kale straightened his jacket, some composure returning. The girl admitted everything under questioning. She takes their pain into herself. That's illegal extraction of biological essence. Blood theft under council law. She's not stealing anything. She's sacrificing herself. Semantics. Kale pulled out his tablet, displayed a document. The council has ruled. The girl is guilty of unauthorized blood magic resulting in physical harm to herself and dependency creation in 3 vampire heirs. Sentence: death by solar exposure at dawn. Draven stared at the document, at the signatures of all 5 council members. Legal. Binding. Unbreakable under vampire law. Unless he invoked older law. I claim King's blood right, Draven said quietly. The hallway went silent. Every guard, every vampire, everyone stopped moving. Kale's expression shifted from satisfaction to alarm. You can't be serious. King's blood right. Article 1 of the original Accords, written before the council existed. A vampire of royal bloodline may claim protection over any human they deem necessary for their survival or their family's survival. That protection supersedes all council authority. That law hasn't been invoked in 2 centuries. Because royal vampires are rare. But I am descended from the Volkov line, making me one of 7 living royal bloods in the world. Draven stepped closer to Kale. I claim Saris Davenport under King's blood right. She is necessary for my children's survival. She is under my protection. And your execution order is void. The council will never accept this. The council has no choice. King's blood right is absolute. Draven moved to the door, started pulling at the steel bars. Open it. I can't. Draven tore the bars off with his bare hands. Metal screamed, bent, snapped. He threw the twisted steel aside and opened the door. Sarah sat on the bed, hands cuffed, looking worse than when she'd collapsed. They'd taken her off all medication, all 4 fluids, left her to deteriorate. Her eyes met his, and she smiled weakly. You're back. I'm back, he crossed to her, broke the cuffs like paper. And we're leaving. They said. Execution. Not happening. He lifted her carefully, felt how light she'd become. I invoked King's blood right. You're under my protection now. What's that? Ancient vampire law. Means you're mine to protect, mine to defend, and anyone who tries to harm you answers to me personally. Kale appeared in the doorway. This isn't over, Draven. The council will challenge this. Let them. Draven carried Saris past him. They can come to my estate and formally challenge a royal bloodline's claim. You know how that ends.
In
their deaths. Draven stopped, looked back at Kale. The girl stays. The treatments continue. My children get the care they need. And you and your council stay the hell out of my family business. Are we clear? Kale's jaw tightened. Crystal. Good. Now get out of my house. Draven carried Saris down to the nursery, where 3 babies screamed with the full force of healthy lungs. The moment Saris entered, their cries changed, not stopping but shifting, like they recognized her presence. Do you have enough strength? Draven asked, settling her into a chair beside the cribs. I have to. She reached for Ethan first, her hands steadier than he'd expected. They're hurting. The council will fight this. They'll find ways to challenge my claim. Then we'll deal with it. She touched Ethan's chest, closed her eyes. The baby's crying subsided almost immediately. Right now, these children need me. Everything else is secondary. Draven watched her work, moving from crib to crib, absorbing pain that should have killed her weeks ago. She was thinner than in Ashford's photos, paler than any living human should be. The vampire blood he'd given her was buying time, but not enough. Never enough. I found your uncle, he said quietly.
James.
In Ashford. Her hands paused. He's alive.
Yes.
He showed me the records. The graves. Everything. Draven pulled out the page he'd taken, showed her Margaret Davenport's note about Thomas Whitmore.
And I found this.
Saris read, her expression unreadable. A vampire shared the curse. Took half her burden. She lived 6 more years. And he walked into sunrise. Saris looked up at him. You can't do this, Mr. Cole. You have children. A legacy. You can't sacrifice eternity for me. Watch me. He knelt beside her chair. I'm not watching another person die for my family. Not when I can prevent it. You don't even know if it'll work. The ritual. I'll figure it out. I have Margaret's notes. I have resources. I have time. Do you? She touched Mason now, and the baby sighed with relief. The council won't stop. They'll find loopholes, ways around your king's blood right. And eventually I'll have found a permanent solution. Draven stood, determination settling over him like armor. For now, you're protected. You're alive. And my children are healing. That's enough. Saris finished with Olivia, and all 3 babies settled into peaceful sleep. She slumped in the chair, exhausted but alive. Still breathing. Still fighting. Your uncle told me to tell you something, Draven said. He said he's sorry they failed you. Uncle James is sorry. Tears slipped down Saris's cheeks. He shouldn't be. They didn't fail. They just
didn't know how to stop.
None of us did. Then we'll learn. Draven helped her stand, supported her weight. Together. Because you're not alone anymore, Saris. You're under the protection of a very old, very stubborn vampire who doesn't believe in impossible. She laughed weakly. You really are insane.
Yes.
But I'm also right. He guided her toward the door. Now let's get you back on proper medical care before Dr. Chen has my head. They left the nursery together, 3 sleeping babies behind them, and a council full of enemies ahead. But for the first time since Sarah died, Draven felt something like hope. Dangerous, foolish, impossible hope. His favorite kind. Draven found them at dawn. He'd been in his vault, researching the ritual Margaret Davenport had mentioned, when Marcus's panicked call came through. Sir, council guards are at the gate. They have transport vehicles. They're saying... Marcus's voice cracked. They're saying the King's Blood Right challenge was accepted. They're taking Saris to the capital for trial. Draven was already moving. Where is she now? Medical wing. They're loading her onto a gurney. Dr. Chen is trying to stall them, but... He dropped the phone. The East Wing hallway stretched before him, seemingly endless. Council guards filled it, 10, 12, too many. And at the center, Saris on a medical gurney, still hooked to and 4, barely conscious. Lord Kale stood beside her, flanked by Elena and Thomas. All 3 council members united. Draven, Kale's voice was measured, careful. Don't do anything rash. Let her go. We can't. The council voted. Your King's Blood Right claim is being challenged by the European Court. They've demanded Saris's presence at a formal tribunal in Prague. Kale held up a document, official seals gleaming. It's legal. Binding. Even royal blood must answer to the full council. She's dying. She can't travel. Then she'll die in Prague. Elena's voice was softer, almost apologetic. Draven, please. This is bigger than your family. If we allow King's Blood Right to be invoked without oversight, Every vampire with a drop of royal blood will start claiming humans. The system breaks down. I don't care about the system. But we do. Thomas moved forward, hands visible and empty. Let us take her. Let the tribunal decide. If your claim is legitimate, she'll be returned within a week. And if they decide against me? Silence. Draven looked at Ceres, her eyes barely open, her lips moving soundlessly. She was trying to say something. He moved closer, despite the guards tensing. The babies, she whispered. Who'll help them? And Draven understood. The council wasn't just taking Ceres. They were taking his children's only chance at survival. I'll go with her, he said. Absolutely not, Kale stepped between them. You're staying here. The tribunal specifically forbids your presence. They want an unbiased evaluation of the girl's condition and her relationship to your family. She needs medical care. Specialized care. Your people don't understand. We have vampire physicians. They'll keep her stable, Kale nodded to the guards. Take her. They moved forward. Draven's instincts screamed to fight, to tear through them all, to paint the walls with anyone who dared touch what was his. But 12 guards. 3 council members. And Ceres, fragile as glass, caught in the middle. He couldn't risk her in a fight. 1 week, Draven said, his voice deadly quiet. If she's not back in 1 week, I'm coming to Prague. And I won't be negotiating. Understood, Kale gestured, and the guards wheeled Ceres toward the entrance. She reached out weakly, her fingers grasping at air. Draven caught her hand, held it. I'll fix this. The babies. We'll be fine. I'll find another way, he squeezed gently. Just survive, Ceres. Whatever happens, survive. She nodded, then they pulled her away. He stood in the hallway, watching them load her into a medical transport, watching the vehicles disappear down the mountain road. Marcus appeared beside him, tablet in hand. Sir, the babies are already showing signs of distress. Without Ceres. I know, Draven turned away from the window. Get Dr. Chen. Tell her to prepare the nursery for a procedure. What kind of procedure? The kind that violates every medical ethical standard, he headed for his office. I'm going to do what Ceres did. Take their pain myself. Marcus went pale. Sir, you can't. You don't know how. I'll figure it out. She managed it. So will I. She has a genetic curse. You're a vampire. The biology might be completely different. Then I'll adapt. Draven pulled out his phone, started making calls. Get me every book we have on pain management, nerve function, and vampiric healing. And Marcus? Clear the nursery. No staff present. This stays between us. Yes, sir. 2 hours later, Draven stood alone in the nursery, 3 crying babies before him. Their pain was palpable even without Ceres's curse. He could hear it in their cries, see it in their rigid bodies. He'd read Margaret Davenport's notes a dozen times. The mechanism was simple in theory. Touch the sufferer, visualize taking their pain, will it into yourself. In practice, he had no idea if it would work. Draven reached into Ethan's crib first, placed his hand on the baby's chest, closed his eyes, tried to feel what Ceres felt, to connect to that suffering and pull it away. Nothing happened. Ethan kept crying. Draven tried again, focusing harder, imagining the pain as something physical, something he could grab and remove. Still nothing. He wasn't human, didn't have the genetic curse. His biology was fundamentally different. He couldn't do what Ceres did. The realization hit like a physical blow. His children were going to suffer, and he was helpless to stop it. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The girl is demanding to speak with you. She's threatening to harm herself if we don't allow it. We're making an exception. Video call in 5 minutes. Draven waited, pacing, until the phone rang. He answered immediately. Ceres's face appeared on screen, pale against white pillows. She was in some kind of medical facility, sterile and cold. Her eyes found the camera focused. The babies? She asked immediately. Crying. In pain. I tried to, he stopped, the admission bitter. I can't do what you do. I don't have your curse. I know, she smiled weakly. But you have something else. Vampire blood. Remember? What? Give them your blood. Small amounts like you gave me. It won't transfer the pain, but it'll help them heal faster. Make them stronger. Buy time until... She coughed, the sound wet and painful. Until I can come back. The tribunal will take weeks, probably months. I know how vampire politics work. They'll drag this out, make examples. Her eyes were fierce despite her weakness. So give the babies your blood. Keep them strong. And find that ritual, Mr. Cole. The one Margaret wrote about. Find out how to share the curse. Saris. Promise me. She leaned closer to the camera. Promise you'll save them. Whatever it takes. Behind her, a guard appeared. Time's up. Promise. Saris shouted, then the feed cut. Draven stared at the blank screen, her words echoing. Give them your blood. It was insane. Dangerous. Vampire blood in human children could accelerate their development, could trigger early transformation, could do a dozen things that might harm them. But it might also save them. He looked at the 3 cribs, 3 crying babies, and made his decision. 1 week, he'd told Kale. In 1 week, if Saris wasn't back, he'd go to Prague and burn the tribunal to ash. But until then, he'd do whatever it took to keep his children alive. Even if it meant making them something more than human. Even if it meant damning them to his own cursed existence. He called Dr. Chen. Prep for vampire blood transfusion, he said. 3 infants. Minimal doses. And Chen? If this goes wrong, if they don't survive. They'll survive, Chen interrupted firmly. Because I've seen what you're willing to do for them. And that kind of determination doesn't lose. I hope you're right. He hung up and approached Ethan's crib. Drew a knife across his palm. Black blood welling up. The baby's cries intensified, instinct recognizing predator blood.
I'm sorry, Draven whispered.
This is going to hurt. But you'll survive. I promise you'll survive. He let a single drop fall onto Ethan's lips. The baby's crying stopped. For a moment, nothing. Then Ethan's eyes opened wide, pupils dilating. His tiny body went rigid, then relaxed. His breathing steadied. Not healed, but stronger. Fighting. Draven moved to Olivia, then Mason. 1 drop each. Watching them transform from screaming to calm. Watching his blood work its strange magic. In Prague, Saris faced a tribunal that would decide her fate. In Colorado, Draven fed his children vampire blood and prayed he wasn't making a terrible mistake. And somewhere in the mountains between them, the clock ticked down. 1 week. 7 days to find a ritual written by a dead woman 3 centuries ago. 7 days to learn how to share a curse that killed everyone it touched. 7 days to save everyone he couldn't afford to lose. Draven looked at his children, stronger now, quieter, but still suffering, and felt something he hadn't felt in 300 years.
Fear.
Not of death. He'd stopped fearing that centuries ago. Fear of failure. Of watching everyone he loved die while he lived forever. Not this time, he told the empty nursery. This time, everyone survives, even if it killed him.
Especially then.
The call came on day 6. Draven was in the vault, surrounded by ancient texts and translation software, when his phone rang.
Prague.
He answered immediately. Mr. Cole, the voice was formal, female, accented. This is Dr. Agnieszka Novak, head physician at the Council Medical Facility. I'm calling about Saris Davenport. His blood went cold. What happened? She's deteriorating rapidly. The accumulated curse is destroying her organs faster than we can treat them. We've tried everything, dialysis, blood transfusions, experimental treatments. Nothing works. A pause. She's asking for you. I'm coming to Prague. Mr. Cole, the tribunal hasn't concluded. I don't care, he was already moving, grabbing his coat, his keys. Keep her alive. I'll be there in 18 hours. I'm not sure we can. She's refusing treatment now. Says it's pointless. Says she'd rather die quickly than slowly. Draven stopped. Put her on. She's very weak.
Now.
A rustling sound, then Ceres's voice, barely a whisper. Mr. Cole, I'm coming. Hold on. Don't, she coughed, the sound rattling. The babies. How are they? Stable. The vampire blood is helping. But Ceres, you need to. I'm dying, her voice was calm, accepting. I've known since I started. The curse doesn't care about vampire blood or council physicians. It just takes and takes until there's nothing left. Then I'll give you more. As much as you need. It won't work. The sudden strength in her voice surprised him. Don't you understand? This is what the curse does. It kills the bearer. Always. It's not a disease you can cure or a condition you can treat. It's encoded in my DNA, Mr. Cole. It's who I am. Then I'll change your DNA. Draven was at his car now, throwing things in the trunk. I'll turn you. Make you vampire. The curse can't kill what's already dead. Silence on the other end. Then, quietly. Would that work? I don't know. But it's better than watching you die. Mr. Cole, Draven. You can't turn me just to save my life. Vampirism is forever. Immortality. I'd be bound to you, to this existence, for centuries. Maybe millennia. Better than being dead. Is it? Her voice was sad. I watched my mother become a vampire once. A rogue turned her without permission, thinking it would save her from the curse. It didn't. She lived 3 more months, suffering in ways no human should suffer, then walked into sunlight because she couldn't bear it anymore. The curse doesn't care if you're human or a vampire. It just kills slower. Draven gripped the phone so hard the case cracked. Then what do you want me to do? Just let you die. I want you to let me finish what I started. Her breathing was labored now. I want to come home. Use what time I have left to help your children. Make sure they can walk, talk, live normally. Then, when it's time, she trailed off.
No.
Draven. No, he started the car, peeled out of the garage. I found the ritual. Sanguis mutatio transference. I can take half your burden, carry it myself. Give you years instead of days. And what happens to you? I age. Weaken. Eventually die, probably. He merged onto the highway, driving too fast, not caring. But I'm 347 years old, Ceres. I've lived enough lives. If I can give you 30 years, 40, that's worth it. You have children who will grow up, become vampires themselves, live forever. They don't need me for eternity. Just long enough to teach them how to survive it. This is insane. You keep saying that. I keep not caring. He was doing 90 now, heading for the private airstrip. The ritual requires both parties present, conscious and willing. I need you alive long enough to perform it. The council won't allow. The council doesn't get a vote. He took a turn too fast, tires squealing. I'm invoking ancestral right. Older than king's blood right. Older than the council itself. The right of a vampire to sacrifice their immortality for a human they deem worthy. It's only been done 11 times in recorded history. About to be 12-inch.
Why?
Her voice broke. Why would you do this? You barely know me. Because you're saving my children. Because you're willing to die for people you barely know. Because, he stopped, the truth surprising him. Because in 3 centuries, I've never met anyone as stupidly brave as you. And I'm not letting that die if I can prevent it. Ceres was crying now. He could hear it. The ritual might not work. You might sacrifice everything for nothing. Then I'll die knowing I tried. He pulled into the airstrip, where his private jet waited. Stay alive, Ceres. I'm coming. And when I get there, you're going to let me share this curse. Because I'm not asking. I'm not negotiating. I'm telling you. You can't force me to accept the ritual. It requires willing participants. Then be willing. He was shouting now, months of frustration and fear pouring out. Be willing to accept help. Be willing to let someone else carry the weight. Be willing to survive instead of martyring yourself.
Silence.
Then, so quietly he almost missed it. Okay. What? Okay. I'll try. I'll fight. But Draven.
Her voice was fading.
Hurry. I don't know how much time. The line went dead. Draven called back immediately. Dr. Novak answered. She collapsed, the doctor said. We're moving her to intensive care. Mr. Cole, you need to understand. Even if you get here in time, even if this ritual works, she might not survive the procedure itself. Her body is failing. Multiple organs shut down, internal bleeding, brain swelling. She's in a coma now. Keep her alive, he repeated. Whatever it takes. He boarded the jet, and they took off within minutes. Money bought speed. Immortality bought connections. He'd land in Prague in 9 hours, be at the facility in 10. 10 hours. Saris had to survive 10 more hours. He pulled out Margaret Davenport's notes, read the ritual again. It was simple in theory. Both parties cut their palms, join hands, and through force of will, transfer a portion of the curse. The vampire accepts the burden. The human gains reprieve. But it had only worked once in documented history. Thomas Whitmore and Margaret Davenport, 300 years ago. And Whitmore had walked into Sunrise 6 years later, unable to bear the accumulated pain. Draven would bear it. He'd bear anything to save Saris. To save his children. To finally, after 3 centuries of taking and consuming and surviving, give something back. He looked out the jet window at the darkness below, stars scattered across infinite black. Hold on, he whispered. Just hold on. In Prague, machines breathed for Saris, pumped her heart, kept her alive through technology and stubborn determination. In Colorado, 3 babies slept peacefully, vampire blood making them stronger, buying them time. And somewhere between earth and sky, a 300-year-old vampire prepared to sacrifice eternity for a girl he'd known less than 2 months. Because some things were worth dying for. And some people were worth becoming mortal for. Even if it meant walking away from forever.
Especially then.
3 months later. Draven woke to the sound of laughter. Not crying. Not machines. Not the desperate silence of dying children. Just laughter. Pure, joyful, alive. He opened his eyes slowly, feeling the weight of daylight against his eyelids. Daylight. That still surprised him. 3 months since the ritual, and he still woke expecting darkness, expecting the familiar embrace of night that had defined 3 centuries. Instead, sunrise.
Always sunrise now.
He sat up in bed, joints aching in ways they never had before. His left knee protested, arthritis, Dr. Chun had said. Impossible for a vampire. But he wasn't entirely vampire anymore. The curse had changed him, aged him, made him something in between. Human enough to hurt, vampire enough to survive. The laughter came again from downstairs. Children's voices. His children. Draven dressed slowly, his fingers fumbling with buttons that used to be effortless. 47 years old now, biologically. He'd aged 30 years in 3 months. Gray threaded through his dark hair. Lines marked his face. His reflection showed a stranger. Middle-aged, mortal, running out of time. But alive. And so was everyone else. He found them in the nursery, though calling it that felt wrong now. The cribs were gone, replaced with playmats and toys. And in the center of chaos, 3 toddlers who shouldn't exist. Ethan stood at the window, pointing at birds. Dada, look. Fly. Olivia was stacking blocks, her tongue sticking out in concentration. Each block placed carefully, deliberately. Fine motor control that had been impossible 4 months ago. And Mason, smallest, weakest, the one doctors said would die first, was running. Actually running, his legs pumping with uncoordinated enthusiasm as he chased a ball across the room. Careful, Saris called from the rocking chair, though she was smiling. Remember what we said about indoor running. Mason ignored her, laughing. The ball bounced off Draven's leg, and all 3 children turned, faces lighting up.
Dada.
They rushed him. Well, Mason rushed. Ethan toddled quickly. Olivia abandoned her blocks to crawl over. All three grabbed his legs, his hands, demanding attention and affection. Draven knelt down, pulled them close, breathed in their perfect, healthy, alive scent. No more pain. No more suffering. Just three normal, chaotic, wonderful children who would live full lives. "Good morning," Sarah said softly. He looked up at her. She sat in the rocking chair, wearing a simple blue dress, her dark hair pulled back. Color had returned to her face. The trembling in her hands had stopped. She looked young again, 25, healthy, vibrant. Beautiful. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Strong." "Good," she smiled, that sad knowing smile she sometimes got. "The curse is
Quieter now.
I can feel it, but it's distant. Like background noise instead of screaming." "Good," he stood, Mason still clinging to his leg. "Any pain?"
Some.
"But manageable." She didn't mention that he was the one carrying most of the burden now. Didn't mention the nights he woke up screaming, his body convinced it was dying from diseases he'd never had. Didn't mention watching him age decades in weeks. They didn't talk about it. What was the point? "Mr. Cole?" Marcus appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. "The council representatives are here. For the evaluation." Draven sighed.
Right.
"Tell them I'll be down in 10 minutes. The evaluations had become routine. Every week, council representatives came to examine the children, document their progress, verify that King's blood right had been legitimate. They tried to fight it at first, the tribunal dragging on for weeks. But then Draven had performed the ritual, aged 40 years overnight, and suddenly no one wanted to challenge a vampire who'd voluntarily given up immortality. Martyrdom was powerful currency, even in vampire politics. "I'll handle it," Sarah said, standing. "You should rest."
Ai fine.
Draven. She moved closer, placed her hand on his cheek. The touch was gentle, careful. "You're aging faster than normal humans. Dr. Chin says the curse is accelerating your biological clock. You need to rest when you can." Later, after the evaluation, she started to argue, then stopped. 3 months together, and she'd learned when pushing was pointless.
Fine.
"But I'm telling Dr. Chin you're being stubborn again. I've been stubborn for 300 years. Not stopping now." The evaluation took an hour. 2 council physicians, different ones each week, they rotated, examined the children thoroughly. Checked reflexes, motor skills, cognitive development. Ethan counted to 5. Olivia identified colors. Mason walked across the room unaided, only falling twice. All 3, perfectly normal toddlers. The physicians made notes, exchanged glances, and finally nodded to the council representative, a new woman named Sarah, young and earnest. "Everything checks out," Sarah said. "The children show no signs of the paralysis. In fact, they're developing ahead of schedule. It's remarkable." "It's Saris," Draven said simply. "She saved them." Sarah glanced at Saris, who stood quietly in the corner. "The council wants me to remind you that unauthorized use of genetic curses is still technically illegal. And I want to remind the council that King's blood right supersedes their technical legalities." Draven's voice was pleasant, but steel underneath. "Sarah stays. Under my protection. Forever." "Understood." Sarah packed up her tablet. "I'll file the report. Same time next week." Same time. They left, the council representatives and physicians, filing out like they did every week. Marcus showed them out, then returned. "Sir, there's also the matter of the estate finances. With your condition, the council is suggesting you appoint a successor. Someone to manage your holdings when I die." Draven said it flatly. "You can say it, Marcus. I'm mortal now.
I'll die.
Probably within 30 years. Maybe less if the curse accelerates." Marcus looked uncomfortable. "Yes, sir. My will is already updated. The children inherit everything, with Saris as guardian until they're of age. You'll continue as security chief and estate manager. Dr. Chen stays on as family physician. He paused. And Marcus?
Thank you.
For staying through all this insanity. It's been an honor, sir. Marcus actually smiled. Even the insane parts. After Marcus left, Draven found Ceres in the garden. She sat on a bench, watching the mountains, her expression distant. Thinking about Ashford? He asked, sitting beside her. Always, she didn't look at him. Uncle James called yesterday. Said some of the families are returning, rebuilding. They want to create a memorial for everyone who died. Will you go? Maybe. Someday, she finally turned to him. When the children are older, when I can explain what happened, what their fathers sacrificed. I didn't sacrifice anything important. You sacrificed immortality. I traded infinity for meaning. He took her hand, felt the warmth of living flesh. 3 centuries alone, or 30 years with a family. That's not a sacrifice, Ceres. That's a bargain. She leaned against his shoulder, and they sat in comfortable silence. Inside, the children were probably destroying something. Dr. Chen would handle it. She'd become surprisingly good with toddlers. Do you regret it? Ceres asked quietly. The ritual? Aging? Becoming mortal? Draven thought about it. Really thought. Remembered 300 years of darkness, of watching everyone he loved die, of immortality stretching forever forward like a prison sentence. Then he thought of this morning, of laughter, of 3 children who would live full lives, of Ceres, alive and healthy beside him, of sunrise viewed, without fear of burning. Not for a second, he said. She kissed him then, soft and gentle. When she pulled back, she was crying. Thank you, she whispered, for saving me, for sharing this curse, for choosing us. Thank you for saving my children. He wiped her tears away. For being brave enough to run towards suffering instead of away from it. Inside, a crash. Mason's delighted giggling. Olivia's shriek of protest. Ethan yelling, oh. They looked at each other and laughed. We should go check on them, Sarah said. Probably. But they sat a moment longer, hand in hand, watching the mountains turn gold in the sunset. A dying vampire and a cursed girl who'd found each other in darkness and chosen light. The most feared vampire in history had sacrificed eternity for 3 children who could finally pronounce his name. They called him Dada now. And he'd never heard anything more beautiful. Inside, 3 toddlers played and laughed and lived, perfectly normal, perfectly healthy, perfectly loved. The curse remained, quiet but present. Draven carried most of it, aging year by year, mortality counting down. But he carried it gladly. Because some things were worth dying for. And family, loud, chaotic, impossible family, was worth everything. Even forever. The end.